You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. Today's episode is going to be number 34, and it's about apprenticeship programs. This is part 3 in our series on finding your workforce and developing talent. And just as a quick review, we started off in the first episode about becoming the silver entrepreneur. In other words, we have people who are finishing a full-time career and moving on to the second act in life, and how can you engage with them as a small or medium-sized manufacturer. Then we went on to talk about the book Answering Why, about understanding and speaking with millennials, a book by Mark Perna. And today we're going to talk about some experiences I've had locally here with connecting with apprenticeship programs and how that can be of benefit to small and medium-sized manufacturers. And then we're going to move on to finding engaging virtual talent. How can you get skills virtually that will help you in your business? And then finally, we're going to talk about some lessons from the book Toyota Talent. So the whole idea around apprenticeship programs for your business is, well, what are the skills your workforce is going to need over the next few years? How are you going to replace your retired employees? One of the solutions for that is high school registered apprenticeships. They can help employees address these things as well as provide you with a real source of talent. And a lot of this involves cooperation and partnering with your local high school districts and junior colleges to develop these programs that will help students in their junior and senior years find on-the-job training and dramatic skill building. And this basically allows you to participate in the development of your next generation workforce. So I'd like to talk a little about the experience that we had here in the Quad Cities of Illinois and Iowa. And we had some local studies done on workforce and the skills gap that we're experiencing. In general, as with many areas, the population is going down slightly and the age of the workforce is going up. And in addition to that, we find that about 35% of high school students do not go on to a post-secondary education. And in fact, they're not interested in that. They want a vocational education or something that's not the white-collar job, but it's more the hands-on type of work. And the whole idea of we need to also connect with students younger. And when they're in 8th grade, they're actually starting to connect with jobs and connect with what are the things that they might want to do. And some of this refers back to our last episode where we talked about job trees and how to help students understand what are the full range of options available to them. Now, the one I'm talking about here in specific is, I'll say, production apprenticeship programs. And this would be slightly different than the skilled trades that we're used to thinking of. Those tend to be a little bit longer programs and more in depth. But these are more apprenticeship programs for production skills. So as far as setting up these programs, if you don't have one in your community, the starting point is always connect with the U.S. Department of Labor. They have guidelines for these things, and there'll be links to this in the show notes so that you can connect with those. The next step will be developing strong partners, and these are partners with respect to education, partners with business, and partners with the community and other sources of whether it be chambers of commerce or foundations. It's an all-around set of partners. Then once you have your program established and you got it registered, then obviously the next steps will be developing a pool of candidates, matching them with employers. The students will get to earn while they learn. So this is a great deal, a great opportunity for them. They'll complete their high school work, they'll be working full-time, and then they'll also probably complete some community college work, again, to wrap up their education and get this certificate or apprenticeship. Now, all this sounds good, but employers in particular, but also others, parents, business people, and educators say there's objections to this. And I'll say that people have explored these things and have found answers to all these questions. You would have to find them for your area and your people. But, can people under 16 work in factories? Yes, that can be possible. Are there insurance considerations? Obviously there are, but people have found answers to those questions. From business perspective, will the students really be ready? Well, what we found in a variety of cases is yes, the students are more than ready to get into this business, and they'll be there on time and with real enthusiasm. And a final question is, can this work in a union environment? Obviously, many of our manufacturing facilities are unionized, and yes, it can. It requires a sensitive discussion with everybody, all the stakeholders involved, but it can work. So in our local area, I said these Illinois and Iowa Quad Cities, basically there are 5 high schools that have adopted one or more of these apprenticeship programs. And in fact, they held a signing day for the apprentices, just as you would for athletic type things, so that people could get in there and really celebrate the fact that they're jumping into a program that's going to help create their future. Now, I'll just give you a quick overview of, one particular program that I'm familiar with, and that was at Moline High School in Moline, Illinois. Moline High School is about 2,000 students in grades 9 through 12. It once had a very robust vocational training program. It had 16 teachers and 11 classrooms. But then in the early 2000s, the national effort on No Child Left Behind really asked all schools to turn their focus more to academics. And so at that point, over time, the vocational training dropped to 2 teachers, and the equipment and the facilities were very limited. And it got to the point where they could serve about 40 students in a given year, and yet the active interest in those programs was double that. And at the same time, from the business perspective, they're sitting there saying, we can't find people to work for us. So it was kind of a perfect storm, as it were. Well, at Moline High School, they adopted a CNC apprenticeship program, and they're just getting started in their second year of it. Now they've built their program up to, they have 4 teachers. They do have a new CNC lab along with the traditional lab equipment that they had before. And this lab was funded through a public and private partnership. It required more than just the school district to create this lab. Some of the elements of it, they have 15 FANUC simulator stations, and this also ties into their overall engineering curriculum that they teach. So it's just a nice addition or expansion of that whole thing. But again, students get to start using these simulators, which are really the same controllers that go on a CNC machine. It's real-world applications that they get started on. And then again, with this public-private partnership, they were able to get 2 CNC vertical milling centers and 2 CNC lathes. So again, the students are starting to have experience working on real equipment. Now, there were 9 business partners that helped with the curriculum and the apprenticeship positions. So as part of the process of developing all this, they had a steering committee with business and education and even other partners, city partners. But they really went through and explored the curriculum that was in existence. They asked the business partners, what is it you really need moving forward? Again, and as work has changed and things like that. And then again, between the public and educational people, they really rewrote the curriculum to make it current. And that was a big plus for everyone. So now they're in the second year of implementing the program, and there are approximately 20 students in each portion of the program. So they'll be entering in their junior year, and then between their junior and senior year in the summer, they will work for the companies. And in their senior year, they will actually be acquiring some dual credit between the high school and the community college, and they'll be able to work part-time. Again, continually to build their skills. A lot of this is they'll be evaluated on how well they're doing on various skill curriculum by the employers who they're working with, as well as their work in the educational institution also. So again, we're really excited about this. We also have other programs around welding that we're really excited about that, again, are really supplying trained people on an immediate basis to the businesses that need them. While this was a nice example of what happened here, what do you do as the leaders in manufacturing? What are your next steps? Developing an action plan and a learning plan for you. Well, I think you really need to embrace this whole idea of work-based learning. You can't just assume that somewhere else your employees will get their training and stuff. And as a practical matter, as the technology changes in your future factory, you're going to have to be upskilling everybody that's there, not just bringing in new talent, but actually everyone will have to be involved in workplace learning. Now, one of the things I often hear is that, well, people won't stay. Okay, I understand that, but people do develop and they do change. In the last episode, I used the example of a young woman who got her welding certificate, went to work at a major employer, then became eligible for tuition aid and gained her degree and moved on to a different position with that employer. But Think how much more valuable she is in that new position because she's had that experience of production and manufacturing. And even for you as business people, the skills you need will change. Maybe today you require a fork truck driver and you have an excellent person involved in that. But maybe that will be taken over by a more automated system, and you're going to need somebody else to work the automated system and build things like that. Well, who better to upskill than that person that was the actual fork truck driver? And then there's just the concept of, in the past, we often said, well, somebody's going to work in this company for 30 years or whatever it may be. Well, you got to have the idea of more. It's about tours of duty from a military term. People will be with you. The work will change. They'll change. And we have to just be used to a constant change in both people and the work that needs to be done in business. And then I kind of jump back to the whole idea from the previous podcast on the career trees from Mark Perna. Looking at this in a more holistic sense, there are entry-level jobs, but they lead to mid-level jobs and higher-level jobs. And we can expect that both ourselves, our companies, and our employees will move through some of these progressions, and we should be prepared to embrace that and work with that. So I would certainly encourage you as leaders in manufacturing to connect with your local educational institutions and connect with local industry groups or your Chamber of Commerce. See what kind of programs already exist out there that maybe you can participate in, or see how you can help them establish some of these. And they're a wonderful set of resources. Please be sure to download the notes for this session and sign up for the email list to get future updates. This wraps up this session, but I also highly recommend some of the resources I've listed in the show notes. So please look those up because they talk more about the actual experiences locally as well as the resources that are available to plan your own programs. So this wraps up this episode. And again, we'll be continuing on with our workforce and talent development series. Again, we've done the Silver Entrepreneur. We've talked about speaking and understanding millennials. Today, we talked about the Apprenticeship Program. Next, we'll be talking about finding and engaging with virtual talent. And then finally, we're going to be talking about some of the lessons that Toyota and their system of manufacturing has offered us. So I would love to have you share a comment or a rating or just drop me a line if this sparks some of your thinking. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.